TooFatLardies Oddcast with Sidney. Well.
Hello, good evening and welcome to this, the TooFatLardies Oddcast. And once again, lockdown means that we're recording this remotely, but fear not, because here in virtual effigy are the dastardly and muttly of wargaming, Nick Skinner and Richard Clark. Gentlemen, welcome back to the Oddcast.
Thanks, Sid.
Hello, Sidney.
How have you both been since the last time we were virtually chatting?
Well, I've not been anywhere exciting, that's for sure. Yeah, all right, mate, not bad. Very well, actually. It's quite strange how being in isolation is not quite as isolating as you feel. You know, I'm seeing a lot of people like you guys using Zoom, which is what we're recording this on at the moment. But it's quite interesting. We're finding other ways to interact socially with other people.
Yeah, I've been using all of them. I've been using Zoom, Teams, Skype, Google Hangouts, even House Party. It's amazing.
You're down with the
Sorry?
kids, mate. You're down.
I'm down with the kids.
Yeah.
Didn't I see you on TikTok the other day, Nick?
Getting
your message out to the masses.
Yeah, that's it. I do have actually what I've been doing is testing the range of my wireless network by trying to work from different parts of the garden and seeing, therefore, if I can profile what my coverage is for my network. It's amazing how boring you can get, isn't it, really?
That does sound extraordinarily tedious.
How far down the garden can you get before your video starts to freeze? Not
welcome
that far.
No.
Welcome everyone to the Virtual Network podcast. We compare broadband speeds. We've probably lost the audience. Nick, what about wargaming? What have you been doing wargaming-wise? Because that's what people really want to know.
Wow. Well, we've been Discording again. I mean, to be honest, how long have we been in lockdown now? I can't remember.
No, I don't know. It feels like
7. Yeah, well, we've been Discording for the whole time. Richard ran a Discord game, of course, the big Kriegspiel one that he ran, which lasted for, I don't know, 3 weeks. And I've just completed a Napoleonic naval one, which lasted for 3 weeks. And I think probably the last 24 hours is the first time I've been off Discord since lockdown started. So we've been doing lots of that kind of stuff, and it's good for generating ideas as well. I think when you're Discording and playing with other players, it's really, you can get some good inspiration from what goes on there. It's been good fun.
Yeah, it's interesting actually. I've actually had to stop playing Discord games because it was taking up so much of my time. It's not just like the usual club night wargaming. I was literally wargaming every blooming day, which isn't what you would have anticipated in a lockdown situation. So it's, as I said, it's opened our eyes to other alternatives. And I think, when we go back to normal, in inverted commas, hopefully we can take some lessons from the time that we've spent doing this and, apply some of those ideas to the real world.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to catching up about how you've been getting on with your solo, Rich, for sure. I hope you're going to tell us a bit more about that. But Discord is fully on, isn't it? When you're running a Discord game, the one that I've just finished, we had 20 players and 52 channels or something. So as the umpire or games master, whatever you want to call it, there's always something going on. So it really does invest a lot of time in that. But I've also been painting. And getting some stuff done there, which I think we'll talk about. Are we doing the best bit on the bench today? Or
we're doing the workshop, mate. Yeah, we're going to go to the workshop, I think, because I've been workshopping loads, and I want to show you some of my bits.
Fantastic. I'll get my screen capture ready.
It's always good to see your bits, Richard. But before we move to the workshop, I was going to sort of mention a couple of things that I think we've all been looking out for. One of them has been the Wargamers War Film Night, which Baloo Games has been running, I think, at 8 o'clock on Saturday evenings, at least 8 o'clock UK time on Saturday evenings. Yeah. And that's been really well attended. They've been doing a film of the week.
Sorry, he was telling me that they vote during the week to see what film they want to do, and he had over 80 people voting last week, which for something that's just a bit of fun on the on the world of social media. That's a lot of people.
That is a lot of people. Yeah, that's a lot of people. They've been watching the films together. I know that they've done Waterloo. The Eagle has landed. I think they might have done Where Eagles Dare and A Bridge Too Far. So can't remember what's up for this week.
They've also done A Bridge Too Far, which is great. I've not watched any of these because Saturday night for me just doesn't work. We're still deep in the coronavirus games in this house. So, but the thing with A Bridge Too Far was I was able to almost keep pace with it. I know it so well that I was almost able to keep pace with them and follow it on Twitter. And they've watched Master and Commander as well, which is another great film. But it's good fun to do, I think. So you watch the film, you follow on Twitter, have a bit of a beer and a bit of a laugh with those others that are watching. It's a good idea.
They hashtag or something, don't they? Whatever it's called, mate. You know, it's
hashtag Wargamers War Film Night.
And that's where they have their chit chats about, cool, look at the bogey wheels on that tank. They're not right for 1944, and other such wargaming type comments. But I think you have to follow Baloo, or you have to at least check in on him. And he's on Twitter. What's his Twitter handle, mates?
He is, I think, at Baloo Games. It's Baloo, BALOO GAMES. Just look for the bloke with the big beard.
Just look for the bare necessities. Yeah, absolutely.
I've got to say, my wife won't let me watch historical films anymore because, like all war gamers, I'm always doing exactly that, pointing out that the hats are wrong, or it's the wrong sort of rifle, or that it's really not a Sherman tank at all. No. So I'm kind of banned from watching those with the family. So, you know, we end up watching any old rubbish, really, to be honest. But like you, I'm always busy on Saturday night because I'm forced to watch things like Britain's Got Talent.
Oh, God.
Which is just terrible. So next time, guys, that you're watching Blues Wargamers War Film Night, spare a thought for me. It's dying quietly watching Britain's Got Talent. Anyway, but on to better things.
Is that the episode with you in it, Sid, or is that just... you make them watch the one with you in it again and again, or are they different episodes each week?
Well, I mean, it's true that you are, you know, in X Factor manner, you are achieving celebrity status, aren't you, Sidney? Do you want to tell us a bit about that, mate?
Well, I just felt that as a host of a podcast, I should have my own jingle. Well, and I thought that possibly might spur on yet more audience numbers for the TooFatLardies Oddcast.
And it was written into your contract. That was one of your contractual demands at the very outset. And here we are, 31 episodes in, and only now can you unveil your new jingle.
That was disappointing, I have to confess. But with the help of a few friends and my own Euro emo rock pop ambient band, I think we can now reveal the new jingle.
Not half.
1972.
No, not that one. That's definitely not the one. No. Mine is a complete Euro dance experience. So here we go.
Sidney Roundward. He's got red trousers.
Well, I think you've got to say that took hours to do, but I thought that sums me up.
I'm impressed. I'm truly impressed. God knows how much of our budget we blew on that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You don't even
all
want
of it.
Yeah. Right, excellent. Well, there we are, Sidney. That is a thing of rare beauty. I think we can all agree on that. But Nick, you on a more serious note, mate, you had a bit of a historical shout out to make of events that are happening that have been very, very unfortunate linked in with your Arnhem campaign.
Yeah, I did. I can't remember how it came to my attention now. I think it was through the Arnhem Fellowship, Rich, which I know you're a member of as well, and they sent out just an update. This is an appeal from the Hartenstein Hotel. Now, of course, you know, many of us will know, probably all of us will know, that the Hartenstein Hotel was the headquarters of 1st Airborne Division during the Arnhem campaign. It's the hotel that Sean Connery occupies, apparently in the film, and it's the position around which the Used-to-Beat perimeter was based and slowly shrunk. And after the war, that became a museum. I'm sure many people have been. We were there ourselves last year, and it's a fantastic museum. It's really, really relevant. It's on the spot. It's set in a key location, And they've got a bit of a problem. The problem that they had is that last year they closed for a fairly major refit, and they were due to reopen on the 13th of March, which was the day that Holland went into lockdown. So, of course, they've been already closed for something like 6 months, and that was due to be their big reopening. And, of course, they were due to get that money back during the course of this spring and summer. You know, it's already costing them something like €300,000 and threatens really the very existence of the museum. So they put out an appeal to people, if anybody, if they can, to help them out in some way. If you go to the museum website, now the best way to find that is just put in Hartenstein Museum or Airborne Museum Arnhem, and you'll find their website. And on there you'll see an appeal. And one of the easiest ways to help them is to become a friend. So you can become a friend. I think it's about, it might be €30 for a year, or €50 for 2 years. Become a friend of the museum, and for that you get various benefits. But most importantly, you get to support this really important and essential place. So I would appeal to people, if they can, to support that and make sure that this is available for future generations. It would be a terrible, terrible shame if COVID were to achieve what couldn't be achieved by the Germans at Arnhem and close the Hartenstein.
Yeah, I
True.
couldn't agree more. It's a fantastic museum to go to, but even if we're located wherever we are in the world and we can't get there personally, I think we would all agree that it's very important that for the future, that it's available for others to see as well as ourselves. We've had that experience and realised what a special place it is, and it would be dreadful, as you say, if that were to be a victim of this terrible current situation.
Well, I think also, I know that many of us are in hardship, but also many of us are finding that we are not spending money in the way that we used to be able to. We're not going to the pub. We're not going out for a curry. You go to a Lardy Games Day, we would spend an evening on the beer and having a curry. If you were due to be doing one of those events and you're now not able to, then actually, maybe becoming a friend of the Hartenstein is a good way to make spend that money in a way that's just as memorable.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it may well serve as the prompt that encourages you to jump in a car, get the tunnel under the sea and go and visit it yourself, because it ain't a million miles away.
Indeed.
No, that's absolutely right. And it's not a terribly long drive from the Channel Tunnel, is it? I mean, it's about, how far would you say? It's about 4 or 5 hours driving?
Yeah, about 4 hours. Yeah, about 4 hours. But it's not an unpleasant drive. I mean, I think we got to Valkenswaard in about 3.5 hours when we did it from the tunnel.
But I think also, even if you're never going to go there, you just think of what it's doing in terms of allowing people to understand the battle, and all the school kids and school parties that go there, for instance. So, even if you're not going to go, just think what it would be like if it wasn't there.
No, I quite agree. No, I totally agree. I think it's one of those causes that you can say is universally accepted as being truly worthy, and it'd be a bit like the Tower of London being permanently shut due to COVID-19. You just wouldn't want it to happen.
And the irony is, I've never been to the Tower of London.
I have. They locked me up there once.
Well, I've never been. It's all those funny blokes in the pikes and the red outfits that puts me off.
Pikeys. Right. Yeah, I can see that kind of old clothing thing is not for you. And I thought, Sid, that would be more your gig. But anyway, what about the fact that today is a special day?
Well, today is a special day because today is the 8th of May, 2020, and it's VE Day, or 75th anniversary of VE Day. So in the United Kingdom and throughout much of Europe, we are celebrating Victory in Europe Day. It's a very momentous day, and perhaps with a particular poignance this year, 2020 in particular, because of the circumstances that we're all living in, when we're thinking about the sacrifice of people and the achievements of our grandfathers and grandmothers and great-grandparents' generation. And I've just been back from a cycle ride this morning. I did about 15 miles very, very early on my bicycle. and went up to a couple of villages where there was nobody else about, and both of those villages were covered in Union Jacks and bunting and things like that, and it was really good to see.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that I think it's important that we're recognising that what we're doing is not being triumphalist or attempting to rub anybody's nose in it, but what we're celebrating is very important, and that is the end of fascism as a form of government in Europe. I've seen some comments on social media of people saying they don't want to get involved in this. They associate it too much with one particular political party or another. But I think, to be honest with you, I'm not affiliated with any political party, but what I'm very happy to do is to celebrate the destruction of National Socialism and fascism as a form of government. And I think we should all be prepared to do that, and especially as we now live in an era where kids at school are not taught quite as much as we were about the Second World War and the rise of Nazism and things like that. And I think it would be very easy when my kids, for example, were studying the history of medicine and the history of North American Plains Indians. It's very important that we don't allow people to take their eye off the ball and forget what happened, because we don't ever want that to happen again. And I think if VE Day simply reminds us of the evil that was ended, that is a positive thing, irrespective of which political party set it up.
I think it's... Go on, Sidney.
Part of the difficulty with teaching history in schools, I'm not a history teacher, but obviously we have friends who are, many friends who are. But I think one of the things about teaching history in schools is the question of whether you're teaching people historical tools or you're teaching the actual historical events.
Yeah.
So,
I agree. That has changed very much since we were at school. When we were at school, we were taught this is the history of your country, and this is, these are things you should be aware of. Now they're taught how to analyse historical material and make their own decisions. Personally, I think that's a good tool to have, but I also think it's potentially a bit of a cop-out. It is important to remind people of good things that have happened and bad things that have happened, so we can avoid the pitfalls in the future. But that's my viewpoint. It's not based on any particular political views. It's simply based on what I think we should try and avoid.
I agree with all of that, but I think the reason that I'm flying Union Jacks outside my house today is more in terms of personal memory to the people that, from my past that contributed and sacrificed so much so that I could still do that. So I don't really look at it as in the same political views you do, Rich. I look at it more as a sort of like a respectful thing to those that actually fought that fight and the sacrifices that they made. And I don't mean, those that went away and died. I mean the sacrifices of people at the home front, and that, we look at the way we moan and whinge about being in lockdown for 7 weeks. This war lasted for 6 years, and even the 8th of May 1945 didn't bring people home. VE Day is about war in Europe. VJ Day, of course, is yet to come. My grandfather was fighting out in Burma. He didn't come home until 1947. But it's this. You've got to have a date, haven't you? A date to symbolise something, and this is a really great choice. And I'm looking through Twitter and social media feeds of the British Army and different regiments and political groups, and even the Lord Mayor of London, who is not somebody that I would normally see eye to eye with. Even he's putting out respectful material about VE Day. So I think it's something that's worth marking and worth recognising. And Sidney, you've got a point you want to make.
Yeah, I just think that the connection actually between now and VE Day is really an important one. So just as yesterday I was out there clapping for carers and banging a pan like a lunatic down my street, as was everyone else down the street. It was a really great noise.
My God, you must have to really bang that loud if your neighbours can hear it, Sid.
It's a very large pan. But one of the things I think we'll also be doing, hopefully this afternoon, is having the national toast at 3:00. My wife informed me just a few minutes before this recording that she has put on ice 2 large bottles of champagne. So I will be practically comatose by 6:00 this evening. So hopefully nobody will be telephoning me after that point. But I think that it's great to have that national connection. One of the things which has been about this awful crisis that we have at the moment is the fact that people have really been looking at what the true meaning of heroism is, and it's in loads of different forms, isn't it? And I think one of the things that we get from VE Day is the heroism of people on the home front as well as people who served. And obviously in the occupied countries of Europe as well, there was a huge amount of heroism there, demonstrated by ordinary people as well as by resistance workers. And having children appreciate that, and kids at school doing that, and projects as one of my kids has been doing this week, I think it's all for the good.
I showed my kids not their children, they're adults, but I showed them the basic ration allowance for an adult from the Second World War in the UK. It was that classic story that when they showed it to Churchill and said, this is the ration, he said, that would make a perfectly good meal. And they said, yes, but it's not for one day, it's for a week. And he was apparently absolutely horrified when he saw what people were living on. And frankly, if you said to me, here's your food for a week, you're in lockdown, here's your food, I'd be bloody horrified as well.
Well, without online delivery. And we've got a lovely photo that was taken when my dad was very small at VE Day, the VE Day street party that they had on this day in 1945. It's a lovely little photo of my dad in his little schoolboy cap and my grandma standing at the end of this big table. And every year we'd get that photo out and show it to the kids and I say, this is my dad, this is your granddad, and this is your great, and so it's an important part of heritage that those kind of messages, narratives are carried on. It gives some kind of meaning to history.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Are you putting on lipstick, Sidney?
I was just going to say that. He is putting on lipstick.
You're putting on lipstick?
What are you doing, Sid?
It wasn't lipstick. It was lip chap. Let's move swiftly on from one narrative to another, because I think one of the great narratives which you can have in wargaming is campaigning. And this week, I think I bought the Dawns and Departures set of map tiles from you, Rich, which have been for sharp practice, and they were absolutely terrific.
Does he make you buy it, Sid?
Yeah.
I thought surely he'd give you a free copy. What a tight
git. You didn't ask. And when I saw it, I thought, well, he's not getting that money back. He's Yorkshire git. He never buys me a pint. He's too bloody tight. So I thought I'll take the beer out of that.
Well, I like to be able to review things impartially, and I feel that you can't really review things impartially if you haven't bought them yourself.
No, I agree. There are many other products on our site that I'd like you to review, Sid.
I certainly paid my £10 for the Dawns and Departures map tiles, which were. Do
you like some of the pastel shades in there? Are you thinking about using it as a guide for your other makeup?
Well,
I don't think it's green. I have to say that's the only concern.
The good thing, Rich, is at least if he buys it, there's a 50-50 chance he's going to actually read it.
That's true. I mean, being serious, I have to say that I think the work that Jim has done has been fabulous, and he's now working on the tiles for Southern Europe. Of course, the set that you've got there is really the main set, which has got things like mountains, rivers, woods, hills, swamps, blah, blah, blah on. But alongside that, we're going to be having the Southern European and Latin American set. And then we're going to have the North American set, which is going to focus more on the tiles that have got habitation on it. So, small farms or villages or towns, because clearly they have their own unique look in those regions. Nick?
Yeah, I was going to say that I can't remember if I mentioned this last time, so apologies if I did. When we were playing the board game ashore from their ships, I was using those cards as, where's the terrain? What's the terrain? I was basically just dealing them out. Okay, you turn over, people were going ashore looking for a water source, for instance, and I was turning over the card, and we kept going inland until they found a card was a river or, had some lakes on it. So it's really easy to use, and they're lovely, really nice pieces of art as much as anything else.
How did you do that? Because let's stress, they aren't cards, they are images.
No, they're not. No, they're yeah, well, they're images. So what I had, and there are 100 images. So actually, I just used almost like a percentage dice system.
Right. Okay.
And in fact, what I did, to be honest, Rich, what I did the first time I used them was I was in a chat room with the player, and I said, "Give me a number between 1 and 100," and he said 74, and that's where I went and said, "Well, okay, you're in some arable land."
Which actually, when you're doing that type of thing, is a great way to randomly generate the terrain. And I mean, I think there are 105 or 106 images, but I mean, you can you could roll a set of percentage dice and get that kind of outcome. So in a sort of role play situation, it would allow players to create their own map of the journey that they've been on, which is quite fun.
Yeah.
Definitely true. And I think really, it's a really great resource which you can use for many things. And I would heartily recommend it, impartially and after. But that's not the only thing we've been looking at. And I think possibly now, because we've been locked at home for some time, I imagine that we've seen some workshop action going on. So it's possibly a good time to wander down to the workshop and see what we've all been up to.
Metaphorically, yeah. I'm the strap on my head cam, so you can follow me down there and we can have a look at what we've been doing. So let's wander through the heart of Lard Island and head down to the workshop. I'll get my head cam on and I'll see you in there, lads.
Has he gone mad?
Yeah, right. Well, here we are. I'm in the workshop where I've got... Let me just sort a few bits out here. Nick, I think you've got your own workshop experience that you'd like to share with us, haven't you? Something about
I have.
the wrong colour or something. So while I sort out the stuff I've been doing, you blather on about that.
Okay, well, when you finish blathering on, I will. So I've not had much time to do painting, really, since lockdown, because normally I do my painting when there's nobody else around, because I haven't got a painting station set up. I have to get it out and then paint and then put it away again. So it's easier to do that when there's nobody else around. And normally, the way that I work, I can get away with doing that once or twice in a week, but I haven't been able to do that. Until earlier this week, when I was able to get the paints out, and I did some spraying, not in the house but in the garden, of some Blitzkrieg tanks that I've had, and I made them up ages ago. Blitzkrieg Shermans. You can never have too many Shermans, can you? Never. God knows how many I've got now. But I was doing another troop of British Shermans. Three Shermans and a Firefly. I've got a Corgi Sherman in there, which has been fitted with a bulldozer plate that Paul Edwards printed for me. A bulldozer Sherman that's going to look fantastic. I'm going to attach the bulldozer bit with little magnets, so you can have it as a bulldozer Sherman or as an ordinary Sherman. That just seemed to make. Yeah, and a very nice M10 Achilles that I've got in 1/48, which is a Tamiya kit, which is going to look super, I think. But the Shermans are Blitzkrieg Shermans. And in my enthusiasm to get them out and get them painted, I got them out, put them on the thing, and I just sprayed them. Now, I had previously washed them, but normally when I do anything with Blitzkrieg tanks, I make sure that I use a good primer, because they are rather notorious for using a wash on their resin, which a lot of people say makes painting very difficult, makes the paint not adhere very well to the surface, and it can peel off afterwards. So I was panicking that I had not primed these tanks. Now I think looking at them this morning, that I've got away with it. And the reason I think I've got away with it is because the undercoat I was using was a Halford's matte black spray, which is almost a primer in its own right. So I think they're going to be okay. But I was really worried yesterday that my only chance to do a bit of painting had come along and I buggered it up.
Yeah, that would be a big bugger up with that many tanks. The amount of money you put into them, you want to get them right, don't you?
Oh yeah. Well, they're not cheap, are they? 1/48. They're a bit more item by item. They're a bit more pricey, but they're going to look good. And if that undercoat works, they'll be fine. Sidney, hello.
I've used the Halford's black as a sort of an undercoat, but I think the Halford's grey primer, generally the primer of choice. I remember I had a slightly disastrous experience with it about a year ago in January, where the spraying that I used with Halford's primer didn't really work well with figures. But I think that was my fault, because I didn't shake it long enough or used it in the wrong conditions. And I've been undercutting quite a bit during this lockdown period. And I think that grey primer from Halfords is a really, really good quality primer. As long as you shake it a lot, use it in a space which is sort of an average sort of room temperature, a garage or something like that's ideal.
Yeah.
And I'd use that first, even if then you use the undercoat with the black afterwards. I wouldn't put the black undercoat straight on the metal, but yeah, personal choice.
No, well, I think I've got away with it. I mean, I have a simple method for tanks. I normally prime them, then a black undercoat, and then for allied tanks, I use Halford to do a camouflage green, which I think is really pretty good, certainly for British armour. And then just a sort of dry brush over the top, really, I think I use Russian uniform for some
Russian
of my British
uniform.
tanks.
Well, Russian uniform is great for British armours,
Yeah, so it comes up really nicely, and then of course you just got the stowage and bits and pieces. That's the time-consuming bit to do that. So I'm really hopeful that they're going to look good, and if I'm lucky, I'll get a bit more time over this weekend to, hopefully finish them if that primer or base coat stays on. So I don't know what it is they put on their kits at Blitzkrieg, but it seems to be, it seems to be something that, other people complain. It's not just something that we encounter. It's lots of other people find it a problem.
Okay.
So Richard, what have you been up to? I'm seeing lots of things coming on your Twitter feed, but maybe you give us the lowdown on that.
Well, look at this. What do you reckon this is?
Is it my birthday card?
So well to an audio podcast. That looks like a big sheet of MDF.
Yeah, but look at the red lines on it.
Yes, we're seeing some red lines on a piece of MDF.
Is it a hill fort or something?
Yes, it's an oppidum, a Gallic oppidum. You're absolutely right. You see, I can't actually say it because it's such a huge piece of wood. This is a bit of MDF that was left over from when we had the workshop built. We insulated the walls and then skinned it with 8mm, I think it's 8mm, 9mm. The sticker's still on the MDF. And this is a bit that's left over. What size is that? I don't know, 3 foot by 2 foot? Anyway, what I'm going to do, I've drawn this red line here where I'm going to cut off the corner. So this is going to go on the side of the table, in the corner of a table. And
that's nice.
A Gallic oppidum. You can see this entranceway here is where you're going to get an entrance, and you're going to have built-up walls. And I don't know if you saw the Roman marching fort that I built on Lard TV about a week or so ago. This is going to have a very, very similar effect. But what I've done is I've bought some Wills plasticard with sort of irregular stone, which is going to be a facing, and then you're going to have a wattle palisade on top of that, which is going to be out of the Renedra palisade. I've just got a couple of packs of that. And we're going to have a big gateway here. And inside here, we're going to have a Gallic, the whole town. So this is a building I've just put together, which is a Hovell's grain store up on legs, and a Renedra generic building. And one of the things I'm really enjoying is doing the tartan that goes with these. So, for example, on this, what I'm doing is just putting a couple of buildings on a base. You probably can't see that well because it's black undercoat, and nobody listening to it will see it at all. But I've got a section of fencing that I've put on there, which is Renedra. I've got some barrels and some a basket of produce, which is from Bad Squiddo Games. Some of their resin bric-a-brac and stuff that they produce is absolutely beautiful resin. It's really nice, creamy resin. I got some of these pots, which you can, again, because it's black undercoated, you can't really see. I've got some pots and amphorae, which are outside the door. They came from Irongate Scenery. I've even got a couple of little War Bases rats over here by the grain store. And I'm just having really good fun putting these together. It's been great. And this here is, this is painted so you can see it a bit better. These are a couple of Hovell's roundhouses, which are fabulous models, but more on that later. But again, you can see I've got some pots in here and this wood here. This wood pile is Bad Squiddo. I've used some tufts to create crops in the garden. This a basket of recently baked bread. I thought, being Gallic, they've got to have a few baguettes in there. Is from Irongate Scenery, who sell on eBay. So it's just been great fun knocking these up and having a bit of fun building up lots of individual bases that can go together to populate the whole oppidum. And then I've got this beautiful thing that will sit on the table, taking up one great big corner, and it will give my Romans something to batter down the gateway for. Because I bought a battering ram. I think I might have talked about it. I bought a battering ram from Paul Edwards, funnily enough, at Sabotaged with a 3 instead of an E, which I was really pleased with. And I kit bashed some Roman figures, some plastic Caesarean Romans from Warlord. And I kit bashed them to be holding this battering ram. And I thought, well, now I've built the battering ram, I better build something for them to smash down. So that was kind of the chicken and egg situation. A small project of 3 figures and a battering ram has then meant I've got to build a 3 foot by 2 foot Gallic town, apparently. What I've also done got from Paul are some 3D printed Roman temporary fortifications. The spikes, the stakes that Roman soldiers carried with them that they would then use to make a palisade by lashing them together, by partially putting them in. And Paul is designing, and I'm helping him with the design just to get it right, sort of Roman fortifications that you can put together. So there you go, you've got a corner and you've got some 2-inch sections, 4-inch sections. He does them in 10 mil, 50 mil. But you'll be able to have a nice little Roman camp, which I thought would be great for one of the scenarios in Infamy, where you've got the Roman engineers trying to build a road and you've got a party there to protect them. So having a few palisades that you can choose as support options would be great fun. I thought really good. So I've been doing them. So I'm very much Roman focused at the moment, not and Gallic ancients focused, I suppose the word is.
The hovels look fantastic. They're really good value as well. I mean, I use them a lot for the sort of 17th century houses, the Dutch houses and the Low Countries buildings that they do, the European range. But the hovels value is, just really, really good value. I mean, the building is significantly less than an MDF building, possibly less customizable, but they are things like big miniatures to paint, but they do just look beautiful. I first saw them years ago, but I first saw them in current terms on a game that John Savage was running, an Infamy game that he was running at Partisan with the Harrogate Wargames Club, who've been very, very helpful in play testing. And I looked at them, I said, oh, they must be Grand Manor. He said, no, think again. And I thought, well, they're beautiful models. They must be Grand Manor. They're absolutely fabulous. He said, they are by hovels. £9.50 each, £9.50. What can you get for £9.50 in the line of buildings? And yet they are a really nice size. I, personally, for me, they are the best bit on the bench for me. Mm. Really impressive, really good. And I've got another contender, which is a set of brushes that I bought on the internet, sable brushes, Rubloff or something like that, made in Russia, Kalinsky sable brushes. They are really, really nice. I'll try and remember to put it in the show notes that we never have. But I got them on either Amazon or eBay. I'll try and put a link into that because they are fabulous brushes. But as I say, the best bit on the bench for me this week has got to be those hovels buildings. They do quite a range of little bits and pieces like that grain store and a sort of covered hay stack and a little sort of barns and things like that. Really good, excellent. Nick?
Yeah, they look lovely, and I think it's it really scratches an itch, doesn't it? This need for small buildings that you can use in multiple periods. Little grain stores, little anything like that is fantastic to just add some flavour to the table. So hovels and other businesses that sell those kind of really useful generic stuff. I love those really, really, and I love discovering new ones as well. So I'll have a look at those. I don't think I've seen some of the hovels ones.
No, it's a trip down memory lane in many respects because obviously they're that we all used 30 years ago, 25 years ago, and actually their ordering system is somewhat antiquated. You drop them an email, they then reply and send you a PayPal invoice. That's fine, that's okay. If you can't be bothered to make the effort, you don't get the buildings at £9.50 each. You can go and pay £45 at some of the other places.
They are really nice buildings. I mean, I think that one of the things I found with the European range is that that range plus the general range plus another couple of things which in the 20mm scale work quite well with the 25mm buildings. And if you mix and match, there's a lot of potential there. On some of the buildings, there's a few sort of mold bubbles that you can sort of fill in with green stuff or pastel stuff like that. That's a good thing to do, because that certainly repays the work on preparing them. You are really painting a miniature. So I found the experience, certainly with the European buildings, to be slightly different to when you scratch build something. So if you scratch build something, you're thinking macro, not micro, and it's a big brush, and very much like your sort of chocolate brown paint, Rich, it's slapped on all over. I think some of the hovels buildings, you've really got to paint quite carefully, but they are really nice projects to do, and great quality. And they're fairly robust, but because they're hard resin, you've got to be a bit careful with them. So packing them and storing them, I think, is something that you need to take a bit of care with the resin building. But that's the same with Grand Manor as well. But on the whole, a very worthy contender for the best bit on the bench.
Yeah, wins it for me without a shadow of a doubt. I think they're fabulous.
Good.
Fantastic. Well, I've been, like many people, had a bit of time, which I've saved on my 3 hours a day round trip commute. And I've been using that to good effect with a lot of painting. And it's surprising how much painting you can get done just by doing, I always used to say 15 minutes a day, but you can probably get double that done by spending half an hour a day or 45 minutes a day. And again, sort of trying to keep a painting journal and a painting diary of the sort of things we've been painting. And I think that that's not just because it's interesting and slightly anal, but also it's an unusual time, this, and I'm sure in years to come we'll look back on it and think, well, how did we spend our time? What did we do? I tend to sort of look back and, if not with nostalgic eyes, but sort of just to try and think, well, what was I doing 10 years ago, 5 years ago? So I always kept a diary. And I think that that's something which with painting can really repay the time. And I think one of the other things I've said before in various places and possibly on the Oddcast is if you're keeping a painting diary, you can always write down the things that don't work. And I think that's really useful, because you sort of pick up a unit and things work and things don't work. You pick up, and then you do a different period, and then you pick up another unit sort of like 2 weeks later, and then you can read what you've actually done previously and what did work and what shortcuts were. I've actually been trying to shortcut quite a bit of the painting that I've been doing and using more washes and glazes. And that seems to be an interesting sort of process.
I try and remember things with my brain rather than writing them down.
My brain's full, Richard. I can't get any more in it, I'm afraid. I've got to write it all down now.
Right.
Yeah, I think we could all offer you some feedback on how successful that tactic is for you, Rich.
Fair comment. Right, moving swiftly on.
Well, that's possibly on that note, time for us to exit the workshop and move to the more comfortable surroundings of the couch of contemplation.
Do you have a jingle for that?
Maybe we will have soon.
Sidney Roundward. He's got red trousers.
Gentlemen, welcome back to the metaphorical couch of contemplation. Have a seat, have a seat. Good. Now, normally at this point, I'd have a rummage through my post sack to see what we could find for a big issue. However, during the last show, Richard, you promised to take a look at solo wargaming and come back with some of the findings. So I thought on our sofa of contemplation, we would have a discussion about how you managed and how you got on. So, take it away.
Well, I took notes on what Charlie was saying last time about the way he does things and some of the ideas he's got. And I was planning to do some games of horse and musket where you've got the table fairly heavily populated. You put maybe 3 or 4 buildings or items on there that could be objectives, maybe the bridge, maybe the inn, maybe the church or whatever. And I thought I was going to go down that route. But to be honest with you, I've been really, really busy doing playtesting Infamy. What I did as part of the playtest period is at the start of the whole lockdown, I really just put the rules to one side, not intentionally, but just because we weren't getting games. And then but it's actually been a really positive thing to have done, because I came back to the rules playing some solo games after 6 weeks. And came at it having to relearn them completely, which is good as somebody who's, preparing a set of rules for publication, that you've got to go through that learning experience yourself. And whilst you've got some residue of memory, as already been alluded to, there's not a lot of it around. So that was good. So I've been playtesting and tweeting, actually, and also putting on Facebook the results of quite a few of the games that I've been playing. And I did the first one. I thought, well, I'm just going to do this in a vanilla manner, and I'm not going to do any of the solo wargaming stuff. But even in that game, I found some of the ideas that Charlie had coming into it, such as deciding on the stance of a leader when he turns, before the game started. Roll the dice. Is he dashing, or is he highly conservative in the way he's going to approach things, or is he pretty neutral? And then I had a conversation with Jim Ibbotson. We were talking about the Dawns and Departures tiles, and he said, I play a lot of solo gaming, solo sharp practice. I said, that's interesting. I said, because I thought you and Aid played a lot of games together. He said, yeah, I prefer solo gaming because it's more interesting than gaming with him, which I thought was quite amusing. Hello, Aid, if you're listening. And he said,
or if you were listening.
And Jim said, the way I do it is like this. He said, what I do is when an officer enters the game, so not beforehand, he said he rolls a dice, and on a 1 or 2, it's an aggressive officer. On a 3 or 4, it's somebody who's neutral. And on a 5 or 6, it's somebody who's cautious or conservative in their approach. And then when that officer is activated, or at least when he might be playing one side, so the other side are run, if you like, by AI, artificial intelligence. When that officer on the other side is activated, he rolls a d6 to determine the nature of his next move. Is it going to be an aggressive move, a neutral move, or a conservative or cowardly mood, if you like? And again, that's done on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But if your officer is aggressive, or your leader's aggressive, he adds +1 to that. And if he's a bit more cowardly, he puts a -1. So if you've got an aggressive officer, there's a 50% chance he's going to make an aggressive move, a 33% chance he's going to make a fairly neutral move, but there's still a 1 in 6 chance that the move that he makes is going to be quite cautious, and vice versa. So there is a chance that your cautious officer might be aggressive, but he's far more likely to be cautious and conservative in his approach. Now, the way he does that, he has general definitions of what aggressive is. So aggressive would be fire at the nearest enemy in line of sight, or advance towards the nearest enemy. Or if no enemies in line of sight, move directly towards the nearest objective point. Or if he's in charge of skirmish troops, if they get to evade, he will only evade if he rolls a dice and gets the 1 for the cautious move. Otherwise, he's likely to stand there and enjoy the punch-up. A neutral move would be something like firing a move towards a randomly determined enemy within line of sight, or with a priority maybe towards enemies within 12 inches. And then a conservative move would be move towards the nearest cover, or they're always going to evade unless they roll a 6, the reverse of what was happening. And using that, I've been playing my solo games, and I've found it to be really interesting. What I've tried to do for both sides is to create a general plan for them. So I had a situation in a game a couple of days ago where I thought, right, I'm playing the Romans, but I'm going to allow the Gallic player to lure them into a trap and allow them to advance halfway across the table before they attack. But it didn't work out like that, because one of the Gallic leaders decided to come on the table and initiate the battle pretty much immediately. And it was quite interesting. It did take some of that control away from me. Now, the thing I haven't really tested is the issue about how do I determine what my enemy's objectives are, because the ideas that we had for that were very much set in that black powder period where you're going to have quite a few potential objectives on the table. To be honest with you, when you're trying to create ancient terrain, there's an awful lot of nothing on there other than, natural trees, marshes, hills, and maybe the odd bit of habitation. So there's not so much of that. But I did find that having developed what I thought would be the plan for the Gallic forces, allowing those leaders to then potentially bugger up that plan did change the action and did mean that I wasn't sure how the enemy was going to be reacting. So it kind of unintentionally achieved that objective. But I haven't come to complete conclusions yet and I want to write an article on this for the Lard Island News. I'm very keen to try it in numerous periods, but I think I've made a good start, and what I have found has been really interesting.
So one of the things there is that those mechanics that you're using are very simple. They can be applied to a number of different periods. And I think one of the things that we said with Charlie is that it's very important when you're changing anything in a set of rules is to make a simple change and see how that works through. And then if it works perfectly, you don't need anything else. But at least you've got your fingers on a simple change. And it seems that's exactly what you've been doing.
The more you change things, and the more complicated those changes are, the more you get unintended consequences which can potentially break the whole game system. And consequently, you really do want to keep these things very simple indeed for that reason, but also for the reason that if you're going to be using this AI system, excuse me, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 times in the game, because sometimes it's obvious what that leader's going to do. If you're at the head of a Gallic force and you've literally just gone into combat with the enemy, you've charged in the last turn, you're in good state of morale, your troops have still got a degree of frenzy and aggression about them, there's only one choice: you're going to keep fighting. If that leader has been fighting maybe 3 rounds of combat and suddenly his troops are getting exhausted, they're not so enthusiastic, in that situation, then you are going to roll. You're going to say, is he going to stay in the fight, or is he potentially going to try and pull out of that? But so let's say you're going to be using this AI system 6, 7, 8 times in the game. It's got to be simple. You don't want to create something that is complicated or complex, because that's going to mean you're going to go, oh, I'm not going to bother doing that, I'm just going to make it up. And that removes the whole point of it.
So you've managed to surprise yourself, have you? I think in 2 ways, by the sound of it. You surprised yourself in as much as it sounds to me like you've actually enjoyed solo gaming, and you surprised yourself in the way that the mechanism has allowed you to surprise yourself in what the opposition do in the game.
Yeah, to take the first point there, I've really, really enjoyed it, and I have found that the games have been tense, nail-biting, exciting. One of the great advantages of that is in a game like Infamy, or like Sharp Practice, it's a card-driven system, which means that not every unit is going to activate in a turn, which means that the narrative takes you along with it. So I had a situation in a game yesterday that was brilliant, where they had some Gallic cavalry who were allied to the Romans, and they headed off to protect the Roman right flank. Well, all of a sudden, the Gallic noble cavalry appeared on the Roman left flank, and the Gallic allies had to circumnavigate the whole of the table to get round there, and you think they're never going to do it. But actually, the Gallic allies, the Gallic nobles, fought a couple of rounds of combat, pulled off back to replen with new javelins and ammunition to their stewards, who act as a rallying point, and then they sat there, obviously enjoying their stirrup cup, and the Gallic allies for the Romans had 3 turns on the trot and galloped right the way around the table and smashed into their opponents and routed them from the table. It was a fabulous bit of narrative. And while that was going on, the Romans were just attempting to hold on in the centre with their legionary recruits holding the line against an ambush from Gallic infantry. And had the Gauls been able to resend in their noble cavalry, that would probably have tipped the scales. So as it was, the game had loads and loads of excitement, and it also, yes, it surprised me. I wasn't sure what the outcome was going to be at any point in the game, and that made a great game. And the best thing was, I didn't have to have either of your 2 ugly mugs gurning at me across the table. It was brilliant.
Well, I was gonna say to you, if you've got a mechanism in there for the point at which you chuck the dice across the room like a spoilt child.
Well, that's my own aggressive officer role. I get a +2 for that.
Yeah.
No, I don't have one in there for people getting petulant about garden walls either.
Touche.
Yeah.
So again, one of the things you've got, just coming back to the mechanisms, is you've created something which is random and very simple, and that provides one or two things. Random's not the right word, but it provides one or two things that you might not have expected, such as the deployment.
It's unpredictable rather than random. We're not going to get back in that bloody debate again, are we? I mean, that was.
No, we're not going to go there. But that one or two things which you did not expect.
Yeah.
They have happened, and really that's what you're looking for, combined with your leader attributes. I should say that I haven't invented this, because I've taken what Charlie and Jim have said, melded the two together, which really didn't take a lot of melding, and to be honest with you, 90% of what I've been using for Ancients has been Jim's system. And so it was done for me. So no, I get no credit for this. All I'm pointing out is what I do, and those guys should take credit. But yeah, sorry, go on. What I was going to say is that with those simple mechanisms, you've created that unpredictability. Whereas when we discussed it before, we were approaching it from a situation, well, what if this happens, and what if that doesn't happen, and then what about this? And I think there's a danger with a lot of wargaming is over-planning. And it seems that with just a couple of things which are unpredictable to the player, you're able to adjust what you're doing in the game, and it becomes a difficult challenge. You don't need to plan too deeply into different responses at different levels. Perhaps that's the or one of the takeaways that we've had from the discussion.
I think that's very true, and I think we've always said one of the advantages of a card-driven system is that it's got that anyway. It is solo friendly because of that anyway. You are going to get unpredictability. But by adding this very, very simple layer on top, if you like, you're getting that bit more unpredictability, excuse me, and that makes what is happening is the order in which troops activate is now variable, but also the choices that their leaders make is now variable. So it's it tops it all off. Everything becomes slightly variable, but not entirely unpredictable, to go back to the Skinnerism of several shows ago.
And what's the output going to be, Rich? Are we going to see this on the blog, or what's?
Yeah, I think Lard Island News is where it's going to be. I mean, I will probably write something about it in Lard Magazine as well, which I think is the right place to do it, because it will mean it's there in perpetuity, but and it will also give me a bit more time to get the whole thing played through in numerous periods, which is probably, the grand idea of doing loads of Napoleonic and 7 Years' War stuff is probably not really going to happen until after Infamy is at the printers, and until Infamy is out, because the schedule now is going to be Infamy heavy, because we've decided to push the button irrespective of what's happening in the big wide world, and go for it. But so far, initial impressions are very positive from my point of view. Solo gaming is something that was enforced. I had to do it as a youngster, and therefore I've always thought of it as a bit second class and not something I enjoy. I've actually found that I've really, really enjoyed this as a result of Jim and Charlie's inspiration and efforts.
That's very good. Well, that's very promising. And perhaps next time we can report back on other solo gaming activities or gaming activities on our next Secret of Contemplation, or even the workshop.
Yeah, I think it would be good to I think we have to consider this an ongoing chapter.
That sounds good. So one of the things that we can report back on is the progress of all of our solo gaming and just wargaming generally in the next workshop or in the next big issue. But since you mentioned Infamy, Richard, Infamy, can you just tell us very quickly an update of where you are on that, especially as regards timing and progress? And one of the things that I think a lot of people were interested in was whether you felt our current COVID-19 situation is going to have any impact on the timing of the production and publication of the rules.
Yeah, that is something that's been foremost in my mind, and I was very much thinking that it was going to delay things, and we were maybe going to launch it at the show later in the year. But I do feel that the rules are, at the point now where they almost take on a life of their own. They're kind of ready. Well, they are ready to be laid out. We're now at this stage where I'm intensively doing this solo play testing. And one of the things that has been a benefit is having this AI system. It does throw up those situations that are unpredictable and you wouldn't normally see in a game, which is really positive. So we've had lots of people from the playtest group also doing things on Zoom. I saw that John and Charlie were playing a game of it on Zoom a couple of nights ago. So we're very much at the last final phase of play testing. I'm going through it now, getting it ready for publication. We've commissioned the card deck to go with it. We have commissioned the tokens to go with it. We have commissioned the poker chips to go with it. And really now it's just a case of getting the layout done. We've got the artwork done. That's all commissioned, and well, not just commissioned, it's all completed. So it's just a case now of pulling it all together, and we're going to go ahead and publish and be damned whatever's happening with COVID-19. COVID-19 will not defeat Infamy.
That sounds fantastic. That sounds really promising. It did look very good when people were playing those games on Zoom the other evening. And that's not the only game that people have been playing on social media. So that's another development which I'm sure we'll be able to report on possibly next time. But I think for tonight, that's probably it. So thanks as always for joining us, and we'll see you again on the next Oddcast, which we hope will be recorded live before a YouTube worldwide audience. So send your questions in on Twitter with the hashtag AskSydney hashtag, and we can review those and line those up for all of us to answer. But for now, my thanks to Rich and Nick, and again to Roger Barraclough and the gang who are going to play us out. So, gentlemen, we'll say to everyone, thank you and good night.
Good night.
Sidney Roundwood was joined by Nick Skinner and Richard Clark, with music by Roger Barraclough and his band.